So here we are up in my office, and I'm going to make a little series of videos, and I'm going to set it up with this one, even though it's probably number 4. But I've watched YouTube videos. I've watched how people are authorities on things, want you to know how smart they are, how well they can do things. This is not one of those. I've been successful in many areas. We'll just leave it at that. This is a series of videos about some of my screw-ups, where I learned more than where I did things well, because everything went smooth then. One thing about being mediocre, there are some things that you do that you just, if you're mediocre, you shouldn't be doing them. An example of that is that I went back as an adult, and my uncle taught me how to do some ag flying and putting product on crops. There's an envelope you're supposed to be in. I don't know what real dusters call it. Now, the ones who taught me were real dusters. They both flew the Himalayas, ferrying gas during World War II as civilian pilots. They were related to the Hunter brothers from Sparta, Illinois. If you look up Hunter brothers, aviators, Sparta, Illinois, you'll find these guys that their story. They flew around the patch, the airport there, a little dirt field for, I don't know, 23 days or something like that. Set the aloft record. Lemberg flew with them some. So anyway, I was taught in my uncle's way how to dust, and he'd been dusting for 40 years. He's pretty good. And so I'm finding myself up over a field. Once in a while I come back with a little crop in the wheel, and they go, wow, good going. At least you're down on the crop. And then one time I'm outside what they called the envelope. You're supposed to stay inside this envelope. And I was a little bit outside it, and I was a little too close to a hazard. And that's when I realized that I'm just not this hotshot flyer that I thought I was. And going into Boeing Field, or regular fields, even farm fields, you don't have to be that great. But your judgment has got to be right on when you're dusting. And I don't know if it was that my judgment was bad, or what I found out later, my eyes were so bad, my depth perception sucked. And so that's what I mean about, sometimes I would find myself doing things and I could get by, but I wasn't that good. And the thing about being mediocre and down low and in close to stuff and getting outside the envelope, something bad's going to happen pretty soon. So that kind of sets up the theme of my videos. I'm just going to bring to light where I got in trouble and I was mediocre, and I think that's where most of the fun stuff in life is. It's not just sitting down or doing something, being outstanding, and people saying, wow, nice going. With me, it's people said, wow, you're still alive? So anyway, we'll go out to the shop and we'll continue this talk about mediocrity. Okay? Talk to you later. We'll go out there now in this video. Bye. Welcome to the shop. Here we are out with my toys, and I'm just going to talk to you for a minute. When I started thinking about doing these videos, which I'm just starting, I thought, what can I do that would be interesting? I like watching videos. The guys that cut down the trees, I think they're just artists. The guys that do tractor work, do different jobs. I do that. I cut down trees, but I'm kind of mediocre. Like when it comes to cutting a grade, I get it done, but I'm mediocre. In life, I've pretty much been mediocre, but that's okay. There is one area that I did really well that had to do with race cars. I didn't do well driving. I tried that. I'll tell you what, when you try and drive a fuel car, like a fuel funny car, fuel dragster, and you're mediocre, get out of the seat and put somebody in there that does it well, because there are guys that do it really well. So I was a crew chief, and I did that well. So in life, all the stuff I've tried has either been mediocre and sometimes just a failure. Like right out of high school, I was supposed to be a best man for a buddy of mine, and he decided that he'd get married on top of Mount Rainier. So my wife and I, we got all the climbing gear, and that's Mount Rainier. It's pretty tall. He's gonna get married on the summit. Her mom was there, her sisters, and some other people. And you overnight at a place called Camp Muir, that's 10,000 feet up, and then you summit the next day up at the 14,410, I think it is. Well, at the 10,000 foot level, I got altitude sickness, and I couldn't go up to the top. So the best man stayed down. Seemed like it was a failure. But my wife and I had a lot of fun just coming down by ourselves, doing, sliding down and doing ice axe arrest, and it was grand. And then we came home. We're about 50 miles from Mount Rainier. And the bride and the groom comes by the next day to tell us they made it, they got married and all that up at the summit. And what seemed to me to be something that I failed at, when I looked at them, and they had got sunburned so bad that their faces were like this big, and their lips took over the whole bottom half of their face, and they looked just miserable. And I went, someone's looking out for me. I didn't get that. So oftentimes what seems like failure isn't failure at all. Or it might be failure, and it could have been worse. So that's kind of how my school career went. I was pretty much a failure. I mean, based on the grades I got. I just didn't want to do what everybody told me to do. I've always been that way. So it's okay. But a D grade for me was a success. And so I had a lot of success in school. But the one thing that I learned, and the one thing that I've taken with me from the 8th grade, we had a student teacher, gave the class an assignment, and said, here's a list of material, go out and go to public libraries and places like that and look up this material. It was in books and magazines and all kinds of stuff, and it was legitimate. It was printed material in public libraries, school libraries. And he said, look this stuff up, and we'll come back on Friday and we'll discuss what you learned as a class. So we come back, and as a class, we came to the agreement, not everybody, but everybody based on the material that we were given to research, that blacks are inherently inferior to whites. I know that might offend some people, but bear with me, it gets better. So we have that discussion on Friday, come to that agreement, basically that agreement. And on Monday we come back in, he gives us another list of material to go research. So we go out for a week and we research that material. Come back on Friday and we had a little discussion, and he says, so what'd you find out from this material? And from the second set of material, we all came to the conclusion that whites are inferior to blacks. And he said, do you find that interesting? And I went into my own little world, because this is a life lesson for me. And I've carried it with me forever. And I'm an old man. And it's the most important thing I ever learned in my entire life. And what I learned was you can document pretty much anything. So you have to be real careful about who's telling you what, and drawing any conclusions from that. Because I think we are just in the world today, I think we're just being played like a cheap fiddle. I would hope not, but based on everything and the critical thinking, which I'm pretty good at, and being a storyteller means that I look at all sides of something and then I veer one way or the other depending on what I think I can get away with. I think that's what people are doing to us now. I went to the bank today. Now, I don't go off this hill very often. I lived as a recluse for 5 years, so being locked up, not locked up like in jail, but you know, they want you to not go to restaurants and all that, comes pretty natural to me. I like not being around people. I think a lot of what people say and think to me is bullshit. They don't know any more than me. They're not smarter than me. I'm not smarter than them. And their opinions don't mean much to me. But I went to the bank today and I was driving around and I hadn't been off the hill for a month. I mean, I hadn't been out in public for a month, which is fine because I get to work in my shop and build things. I've got mills and lathes and welders and, my machines, and I have no problem being by myself. Now I have a wife and a couple little dogs, and I like dogs better than I like people anyway. So I went off the hill and I went to the bank, and I was amazed how little activity there is in these little towns around me. Everything is closed. And I'm just wondering if we're not believing some of the data that people are throwing our way, and we should do a little critical thinking, and maybe they're playing us. Maybe not. Maybe so. So that's, I just thought I'd share that. That's my lesson of the day for me, and the most important lesson I ever learned in my life. So take it for what it's worth, but things don't make sense to me right now. Not at all. Have a good day, and I'll make more videos. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, take care.